Washington, ghost-like objects dart across the radar screen at the CAA Traffic Control Center at National Airport for several hours, traveling more than 100 miles an hour. Air Force jet fighters spend several hours chasing the objects plotted on the radar scope.
Something else is out there.
There's something else out there, okay.
Of all the banks and braes of bonnie Scotland, none holds more fascination than the murky waters of Loch Ness.
Tell me, do you think there is life on other planets?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I suppose there would be.
No, he seems definite. You seem
Definitely.
definite about it. How do you see this life and where?
Oh, I've seen a flying saucer.
Blackwater Media presents Darkfall. Real-life encounters with the paranormal and the unexplained. A friend of mine recently told me a story about something that happened to his grandfather back in the 1960s. He said that his grandfather grew up in the hillsides near Huixquilucan in the state of Mexico. Now, a lot of Americans get confused about this because there is a state of Mexico within the country of Mexico. It was very rural during that time, and he lived on a large piece of property with a few neighbors. His family didn't have much money, so he would tend to his neighbors' cattle, who owned the property further up the hillside, to earn a little extra. His neighbor would usually accompany him in rounding up the cattle nearing sunset to bring back to the barn. One day, though, the grandfather said his neighbor got sick and stayed inside instead of accompanying him. This wasn't too out of the ordinary, as he'd been doing this for a while and was very much trusted. Nearing sunset, he started herding the cattle and walking them back to the stables. When he did a count, he noticed that a cow was missing. Going back to look for it, he headed down the hill when he said he heard rustling and snapping in the dry cornfields. Thinking the cow had somehow gotten lost in the field, he called out to it. Emerging from the cornfields was what he described as an incredibly large dog, and he said he was overcome with a sense of dread. He immediately turned to run up the hill and started screaming at the top of his lungs. He said he turned around to look behind him, and the dog had gone from 4 legs to 2 in pursuit of it. His neighbor had heard him screaming and immediately opened up the door and let him in. My friend said he wasn't too sure about what happened after that, except that he told his neighbor and his family what had happened, and his parents no longer let him go back up there to tend the cattle. A detail that stood out, according to my friend's mother's retelling, was how vividly he saw the dog shift into a biped to run after him. After my friend's mother finished telling the story, she couldn't remember the name for these kind of creatures. I told him that there are lots of stories of skinwalkers and werewolves, but it sounded to me like his grandfather had been pursued by what nowadays is called dogman, and also that he was damn lucky to get out of that situation alive.